Hey YouTube, what's up? About to get started tonight. Saturday night. Rats in the race, buddy. It is. Welcome to the show, guys. How's everyone doing tonight out in YouTube land? Live stream, we got 59 people watching.
Hello.
I got my buddy Chris here in studio.
The Cryptic Mystic.
The Cryptic
You
Mystic.
can get me on TikTok at @isthewordofthelord. How are you?
You can talk into that mic.
Oh, it's me, my mic now. We had that feedback earlier. Okay, great.
You
Excellent.
should be good. No, I think
I love
it should be good now.
I love it. Hello, guys.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about John Lear tonight, the passing, and this is not an April Fool's joke, as some people thought. No, it's unfortunately true. We're going to watch some old John Lear interviews and, dig into some real old John Lear stuff, and we'll do a whole tribute to like all the key John Lear material. So we'll start with this. This is my introduction to John Lear, some of this older stuff. So by the way, that video was called if you look up The Wall,
It's Alok and Slevin. ALOK and SLEVEEN, I think. Slevin.
So if you look up that, you'll be able to find that
The Wall,
that video.
Alok and Slevin. Yeah, it's a great electronic song. It's great. On the record with Nipples McFadden.
Hello and welcome to On the Record. Flying saucers, extraterrestrials, monsters from outer space. The government has been telling us for years that they're not real. They're weather balloons or swamp gas or reflections
One hell of a weather
of the
balloon.
sun or the ravings of lunatics. But serious UFO researchers say a breakthrough may be very close. Some of the government scientists who worked on the top secret project Blue Book.
What is that
already
drop?
took
What is
off.
that up
What's
there?
more, a series of
That's the Billy
revealing
Meyer
government documents
photos from Billy
have
Meyer,
trickled out of the federal files.
the one-armed
Documents that paint a much
bandit.
different
Are they trying to say that was
picture
a
of the UFO
being in
phenomenon.
the in
One of
that
the most dedicated
UFO, like driving it, like his head out, like
researchers
it's a
right here
tank?
in Las
Is that what
Vegas.
it looked like
His
to you?
name is John Lear.
You know what I mean?
and
He's like,
joins
it's
us.
a, you know, and he's
Lear,
like,
thanks
it
for
was,
being
you know what I'm trying to say? What does it look like?
To begin with,
Like there's
A
an
lot of
alien's
those
head
airline
sticking out.
pilot,
You know what I mean?
captain,
A lot of those have been
held
debunked, yeah.
17
Oh, I'm
different
sure. Yeah,
world
that's
speed
what I'm trying to
records at
say.
one
It looks
time or another.
ridiculous.
You're a member of the famous Lear family that all Nevadans are pretty much familiar with, a former state Senate candidate. You don't sound like the kind of guy who would get hooked up in something that a lot of people would say is a bunch of nonsense.
No, it's just by coincidence that I got really interested. This about 2 years ago. My father saw a UFO and my brother did, and they were very interested, but there was really no proof, as far as I was concerned, to really.
By the way, if you guys don't know, John Lear, his father. Let me find this. John Lear. So John Lear was a CIA pilot. He got that job through the connections of his father, and his father was, one of the guys with the turbine jet for the Learjet Corporation. That's John Lear, William Lear from the Learjet Corporation. So John was. This is John, one of the last interviews that he had given, and man, it's just a shame. This actually.
He's reading the Playboy upside down. That's great.
Yeah, this was a picture of John that Bob Lazar had. It said Bob Lazar said this is his favorite picture of John Lear, and that he wasn't allowed to release it until after John Lear's death. But here it is, reading the Playboy upside down. That's great, man.
Look into it until.
Oh, and by the way, John Lear's dad was involved in all kinds of top secret research too, related to the Biefeld-Brown effect. So when the U.S. Air Force was researching that, they did the I think it was the U.S. Air Force that did this research, but it was Bonson Labs, and Bonson Labs. You guys can go to BAHNSON, and if you search for Bonson Labs on my YouTube channel, you'll find a cool video on all the Biefeld-Brown's research, because he did all this research in North Carolina, and at one point John Lear's dad comes in and is checking out the research. So he was involved with all this.
About 2 years ago.
Your father and brother saw
I
them
can
in
hear
the
you cough,
details.
by the way.
Huh?
My brother saw one. He was flying a
You hear me?
P-8 from Phoenix to Los Angeles at night. It just appeared in front of him. He made two turns, 90-degree turns. It stayed in front of him and then disappeared. And my father was flying at night, I believe, over the Arizona desert, and saw one too.
So you got an interest because of the other members of your family. How did you start out?
I had an interest, but there was really nothing I could put my finger on. And like I say, 2 years ago, a friend of mine came through town. We had flown in Southeast Asia together, and he was retiring from the Air Force. He came over, and we started talking about where he had been for the last 15 years. And he mentioned that he had been stationed at Bentwaters. And I said, "Oh, Bentwaters, that's where the flying saucer supposedly was in 1980. He said, "No, John, not supposedly. It was." He said, "I don't care if you believe me or not. It landed. I didn't see it because we were confined to quarters, but I know people who did, and I'll give you the names. And if you ever see them, tell them you know me, and they'll tell you the whole story." Since then, I ran into one of the security police who was within 10 feet of the saucer and actually saw the three aliens get out and go up to General Gordon Williams, who was the wing commander at that time.
Now, there was quite a bit of documentation regarding this Bentwater incident. Why don't you go into that a little bit?
There's the Colonel Halt memo that came out under the Freedom of Information Act, and it told about the mysterious lights and beaming down and everything that happened in the forest except the actual alien landings. That wasn't in the memo. And there was also the tape, Colonel Halt tape, forest tape, that he made over a period of 8 hours. And there's a 20-minute segment that we've been able to get a hold of that you can hear him running through the forest and being worried, saying the thing's after us.
Now, why do you suppose that hasn't come out? I mean, this particular incident, why hasn't come out if so many people, and you've told me about this before, have seen it or seen these aliens. Why haven't some of them come forward?
A lot of them have come forward, but they're just not getting any press. It's something that people just don't want to deal with. The press doesn't want to deal with, and people aren't going to listen to something unless Dan Rather or any of your big press people are going to tell them about it. And they're just too spooked. The Air Force has made an art form of ridiculing people who have talked about this thing. They've done an excellent job of covering it up for the last 40 years. George, basically what we're dealing with here is, I'll give you the bottom line.
Okay,
I'm not trying to sell it.
I want to hear your thesis.
I'm
your
not trying
central
to sell a
point.
book. I'm not trying to promote a lecture. This is based on what I've come across after intense research in the last year. And I have found out that the government has retrieved between 10 and 15 actual flying saucers, 3 of which have been in perfect condition, 1 of which they tried to fly. They have between 30 and 50 alien bodies in cryogenic storage. We even have the name of the person whose job it is.
You guys are having trouble hearing this? Like my audio is, all my levels are jacked through the roof. And
Oh my God! Somebody gave me money through my creators tool.
I don't know why. People aren't hearing this. So you can go look at this video here if you're having trouble with the audio, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
There's audio problems.
maybe it's just quiet.
To show these bodies.
I mean, like we can hear it, and they can't.
And the people who are authorized to see them.
It's
They
very nice.
represent at least 5 different civilizations.
I can't imagine a Dan Rather or a Tom Brokaw, if that were to come to their attention, a story of that magnitude, that they wouldn't do something with it.
Well, I can't answer that question. I don't know why they don't do it. There certainly is enough evidence based on what I've looked at. For instance, the Linda Moulton Howe documentary in Denver for the CBS affiliate there called A Strange Harvest. Since 1975 to 1980, when she made the documentary, there's at least 9,000 cattle mutilations. Now, the government said that the mutilations were normal. Your desert predator did these, but they weren't. The mutilations,
I think we have a picture of these somewhere. Maybe we can see that as you're talking.
well, that's
the next picture. There we are.
This is a mutilation. New Mexico State Police did the research on, or the investigation on it, and they cut out certain parts with and the cut was made with a laser beam far sharper than anything we have. As a matter of fact, they were able to determine that they cut between the cells and didn't cut the cells themselves. We presently don't have this kind of technology.
Well, if we don't know that we have this kind of technology, or you and I don't know that we don't, but that doesn't prove necessarily that it's ET.
No, except that there's usually a visual sighting of a flying saucer or a strange light at each one of these sightings.
Okay, you mentioned the saucers and the bodies. Now, what kind of proof do you have that is true? How do you know that?
Well, let me take a look. Let me read to you first what the Air Force says about the bodies. First of all, I'm going to read from the Introductory Space Science, Volume 2, Department of Physics, United States Air Force. This is Chapter 13, Unidentified Flying Objects. Now, this is what the Air Force has the students at the Air Force Academy read. And it says the most commonly described alien is about 3.5 feet tall, has a round head, arms reaching to or below his knees, and is wearing a silvery spacesuit or coveralls. Other aliens appear to be essentially the same as Earthmen, while still others have particularly wide wrap-around eyes and mouths with very thin lips. And there is a rare group reported to be about 4 feet tall, weight of around 35 pounds, and covered with thick hair for clothing. Members of this last group are described as being extremely strong. Now, I'm not making this up. This is an Air Force. You can pick out an Air Force physics book and read this stuff. And at the end of the chapter, they go on to say, this leads us to believe in the unpleasant possibility of alien visitors to our planet, or at least of alien-controlled UFOs. Now, the picture that we have of the big head that the Air Force describes, this picture was drawn by an Army surgeon. These are one of the bodies that was recovered in the famous Roswell incident of 1947.
Tell us about that.
It was the first flying saucer that crashed and was recovered by the Army. It was covered up. There has been several books about it. They recovered 4 beings, and one of the surgeons that was responsible for the autopsy drew that picture, and and came up with some of these um, interesting things in the autopsy. I'll just read a couple. 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, 2 round eyes without pupils, no earlobes, nose is vague, neck described as being thin, um, arms is described long and thin, reaching down to the knee section. You can see that there's a webbed portion in the hands, no teeth, no apparent reproductive organs, um, brain capacity unknown, colorless liquid prevalent in the body without red cells, no lymphocytes. And there's more in that particular report.
This is an autopsy report. And you said the government goes to great lengths, the Air Force in particular, to discredit this kind of stuff. Where did this come from? How did you get this?
That came in a private, that came from the private collection of Leonard Stringfield, who was one of the premier researchers. He worked for the Air Force in the early 50s in a secret project reporting UFOs. Then as a civilian, he continued his private research, and this is out of his collection.
Why does the government want to hide this? Why doesn't the Air Force just come forward? Why doesn't, why don't they level with us if this is all true?
Well, there's not really much they could say based on what I've been able to find out. George, they're really, what could they say about it? They've been researching it for many, many years. And based on my information, let's say that the president decided to make an announcement. If he made it today, this is what I think that he would say. My fellow Americans, I come to you before you tonight with an announcement of great importance. Despite all our denials, flying saucers do in fact exist. Where they come from, we do not know. Who is in them, we do not know. Where they are from, we do not know, nor do we know how they got here or what they want. We are unable to duplicate any of the metals found on the several craft we have recovered, nor are we able to figure out how they are propelled. We have hidden these facts from you over the past 40 years in hopes that we could give you more answers. Unfortunately, we are no closer to answers today than we were 40 years ago. God bless you all.
In other words, you find it highly unlikely that the president would ever make a statement, anything like that.
No, it's just, it's too big. It's the problem is not only just the fact that there are five and as many as 10 different civilizations visiting us. Apparently, and this is from the research that I've done, at least 90% of them are hostile. And when I say hostile, if not hostile, they have a completely different set of morals than we do.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to come back to the president and aliens because there have been some statements made by presidents, including President Reagan. We'll be right back. Welcome back. UFOs, are they real? We're talking with John Lear on the subject. Mr. Lear mentioned a couple of minutes ago about what the president might say about UFOs. Do you believe that various presidents have been informed about what you believe to be the truth on UFOs?
Each president has been informed up to and including President Reagan. I'm not sure to the extent they are informed. Privately, I don't believe they are giving the full briefing. The people that control this information is a organization that we know of as MJ-12, and they're a top group of military and scientists. And I do know that when the president becomes president, it takes at least 3 or 4 months before he actually gets the clearance to know everything there is. Now, that doesn't mean they tell him, but it does take 3 or 4 months to get. Now, talking to the president, let's talk about what the president has actually said. Has he mentioned anything about aliens?
President Reagan?
President Reagan on December 4th, 1985. This is a copy of the speech from the White House just before he went over to Iceland. He says, I couldn't but one point in our discussions privately with Secretary General Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children, wherever we may live in this world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all our local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together.
Now, he couldn't be just making a supposition for purpose of making a point? You're saying he's trying to tell us something.
Well, here, 1 week ago at the 42nd General Assembly in front of the UN, September 21st, he says, in our obsession with the antagonism of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside, universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force not already among us? Now, this is right out of a White House speech. I'm not making this up.
What did he mean by this alien force? I mean, does it say? Does he go
Yeah.
on to say something?
Yeah, he says, what could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war?
I see.
But the point is, why would he even bring up aliens? I mean, it's pretty far out for the president of the United States to be mentioned threats from outer space.
Okay, what about President Carter?
President Carter, we have the quote from Carter when he was during his election campaign. If I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and the scientists. I am convinced that UFOs exist because I have seen one.
Jimmy Carter says he saw one.
That's Jimmy Carter. He saw one in
So,
1973.
but he didn't tell us, did he?
He doesn't. The pressure is enormous on these people to cover this stuff up.
How can that be? Are they afraid of a panic? That people would panic?
There's the panic problem, and there's also the problem that, in fact, in Cro-Magnon man, there may have been some tinkering to make us what we are today. And that's been borne out by several researchers. We couldn't have developed exactly, there's the missing link. Something had to happen to get us going. Between 4,000 and 8,000 BC, we had just been going along and for hundreds of thousand years not doing anything. All of a sudden, bang, we started making pottery, invented the wheel, invented fire, and everything took off. What was the key that did that? I don't know, but it causes one to think.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago before the break that you think 90% of these visitors are hostile. What makes you think that?
Well,
Doesn't fit with what we think of as ET, you know?
if you read several of these books that are on the newsstands, one is called Intruders, one is called Communion. They apparently come down, and when I say apparently, this is taken from 300 hypnosis cases. A friend of mine has done 140 of them, and the people are abducted. They're taken up into a saucer, usually lasts about an hour. They do all kinds of experiments. They give them shots, they poke them, they cut them, they do all kinds of things, then wipe out their memory and send them back. Only after several months of some psychological problems do they end up going to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, on trying to find out what the problem is in the use of hypnosis, finds out that this person has been abducted.
What's the reason for that? What are they trying to learn?
There's three things that they're trying to do with these abductions. The first thing is they're trying to monitor us. It started in the early 40s, and they'd put a little unit, very small BB type object, way up in the backside of the brain, and they'd leave it there for about 18 years. They'd pick them up and put it in about 4 years old. About 12 years old, they would pick them up and monitor it. Then about 18, they'd take it out. The second thing they did is they put a post-hypnotic suggestion. According to many of the people that have been hypnotized, and we found out what they've told them, apparently within the next 2 to 5 years, there is going to be a big event. Something enormous is going to happen. And these people who have been abducted, and there's probably over 100,000 of them, have been given some place to go and something to do. But under our best hypnotic techniques, we cannot find out what it is.
So how do we know that that's true?
Because they said they're going to do something. They know that they're going to do something, but they, under the hypnosis, they can't.
And anyone who's seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, this is like the exact plot of Close Encounters of the Third
That's
Kind.
funny.
You know, it's like
That's hilarious.
it's
Do you know
pretty-
that Spielberg ate that girl?
it's pretty crazy. Oh, I heard about that.
Find out exactly what it is. And the third thing that they do is genetic experiments. They've been crossbreeding. There's a very good book out now called Intruders, written by Bud Hopkins, and it's about a crossbreeding experiment with a girl in Indianapolis. And they actually, the the big head, what we call the big head in research, the little 3.5 foot tall with a big head. They crossbreed that with this girl in Indianapolis, and there were 7 children. And just last fall, before the book was published, they brought the oldest and the youngest to show to her, and they let her name all 7. Now, this book has been thoroughly researched by Bud Hopkins, and although it sounds strange, believe me when I tell you, you may not find out in a month, a year, 5 years, or 10 years, but you'll look back at what I'm telling you now, and you'll say to yourself, "My gosh, the son of a gun was right."
Well, where's this girl now? She's just
She
living
lives
on
in
a farm.
Indianapolis. She got no. She lives in town, or just outside of town. She just got married. Bud went to her wedding. We all know who she is. She gets along, just fine. It doesn't mean just because she was adopted and gave him children doesn't mean it was the end of the world. It was just a part of her life.
Why don't we see a lot of photographic evidence, as many cameras and video gear? Why don't we see a lot of that?
There are
I
a
know
lot of them.
before you go on, I
Yeah.
know the pictures that we showed in the beginning of this program, you say they're baloney, they're phonies.
That's right. That the pictures you showed at the beginning were the called the Myers incident. It's called the visitors from Pleiades, and any ufologist worth his salt knows, and who has researched that case knows that he cannot back it up with the negatives and the essential information to prove that something like that happened. So we look at that as suspect.
So in other words, you run into your share of phonies as well in your research.
Absolutely. There's not that many, but there are a few out there. There's so many people that have real stories to tell that we're just so busy with those. For instance, let's take the November 17th Japan Airlines incident.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take another break, and we'll do that when we come back. Stay with
Okay.
us.
Hey, how's that for the audio? Is that better? I turned the gain down a little bit.
Left with John Lear. We're talking about UFOs. You're about to tell me about the Japanese airline incident. It's probably something that's still in the memory of our viewers.
Yeah, the Japanese airline incident was a cargo 747 that had taken off from Iceland flying to Anchorage. And as he passed over the United States border and the northern part of Anchorage, he was intercepted by a UFO that was twice the size of an aircraft carrier, and he was followed by 40 minutes. He made a complete 360-degree right turn. He made a descent of 5,000 feet, and the thing stayed with him. Regardless of what you hear, the FAA did have him on radar, and so did the Air Force. If you have a picture there, this is a 26-page document made by Bruce Maccabee, who's a physics physicist employed by the Naval Surface Weapons Laboratory and one of the most respected figures in ufology.
I don't think we have that picture, so go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to hold it up here, and you can see the size of the 747 to the UFO. Now, the UFO was not brightly lit like that. It's just made like that for reference. It was dark, but this is what he saw beside him.
Well, whose rendition is this?
This is the captain's. This is from the captain's rendition when he was debriefed by the FAA. Now, certain UFO debunkers have said what he saw was the planet Jupiter. Well, this is an insult to all transport category captains around the world. I mean, the guy knows the difference between something that's twice as big as an aircraft carrier and the planet Jupiter.
I've also heard that it's the reflection of his own plane.
What the radar?
Yeah,
that was an
something like
attempt to describe it. You can't imagine what pressure these people are under to cover this stuff up. It's tremendous pressure. It really is.
Okay. You were going to tell me that the church. Did you want to go further into the JAL incident?
No, I just want to say that's a 26-page report. It had the captain and the ATC conversation. It had the radar plots, and it had the Air Force plots and the FAA radar plots. There was no question about it.
You want to tell
the thing
me
followed him.
The church? What do they think about UFOs?
Well, here's a copy from the London Evening News, July 21st, 1987, and it says, "Prepare to meet thine aliens. Vatican theologians have acknowledged that there could be life on other planets. Now they plan to train missionaries capable of working in space and meeting aliens. Jesuit scientists at the Vatican Observatory in Frascati near Rome have reported moving lights and other identified phenomena in the sky. starting in September, the Vatican University will have a special UFO section.
You've said before you thought a lot of their intentions were hostile, and you've mentioned before that a lot of the sightings are around military bases. Why don't we see them here, Las Vegas? We got a lot of military bases here.
Well, in fact, there have been a lot of reports of UFOs in and around Las Vegas, not specifically over the Air Force bases. We have the test site, and of course, we don't know what's going on there. And we have Nellis Air Force Base, but there have not really been a lot of sightings over there. The main Air Force sightings were in 1975, and the UFOs descended on every Strategic Air Command base guarding the perimeter of the northern United States. And they hovered over the nuclear weapons storage area, and they stayed there with impunity for up to 2 and 3 hours over a period of 3 days.
And nobody heard about it.
Well, there was a few reports, but you really don't. I have a report 150 pages long of the F-106s that were sent out to chase them, and the helicopters, and notifying the Canadian authorities, and the security patrolmen that were sent down to actually see what was going on. And they'd come up on these things, and they'd say, "I'm not going any further."
You think maybe it's a top secret area? If the Air Force actually does have them, maybe they got him here.
I'm certain they do. Up at the test site, there's a report that of the 3 that they got in perfectly good condition, at least 1 is up at the test site and has flown, and 1 was being flown as of 1981.
By us.
By us, yeah.
We mentioned at the top of the show that perhaps a breakthrough might be coming, that some of these people from MJ-12 or from the Project Blue Book who are in on the government's research and who saw some of this stuff might be ready to talk. We got about a minute left. Why don't you tell me about that?
It's our information that half of part of MJ-12 wants to release it, part of it doesn't. We're hoping that we can do this, but of course, as researchers, we're not aware of all the ramifications. We just know of what we're looking at. So we would like to see them release it, but we really don't know if they are.
Okay, John Lear, it's been very interesting. You keep us posted.
Sure will.
Thank you. We'll see you next week with more of On the Record.
Yeah, special thanks to George Knapp, who put that together way back in the day. And how's everyone doing out there? I'm going to keep going over some of the old archives of John Lear. As people know, the Living Moon. The Living Moon is a forum that John Lear was a large contributor to the Living Moon forum. So this was, before YouTube and before all that, there was forums, and that's where John Lear would often sit. I don't know I think he went on here and deleted a lot of his old stuff, but you can still find some of that information here if you guys go back over that too. So definitely go check out that information there. John Lear is an interesting guy. He entertained a lot of conspiracy theories over the years. He was also a big contributor on Above Top Secret. I'm sure you can go on the Above Top Secret forums and find tons of old stuff from John Lear on Above Top Secret as well, for people wishing to do deep dives and digs down the rabbit hole and the archives of history. That stuff's there, worth checking out if you are interested in a history of John Lear. I wanted to point out something interesting. I saw this on Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan apparently posted this on the 31st of March on Facebook, and trying to get Michael Schratt on here and Dan, but
this is a simple echo. Actually, it's very simple to explain. When you clap in front of a pyramid, of a slope, the sound will go to the top. In this case, a pyramid. And if it's there a cavity or a temple, like in this case, the echo will come back to you. If you clap in front of an Egyptian pyramid, nothing happens because the sound goes away. Actually, here, the sound comes back. Why it sounds like a bird? Don't ask me that, because we don't know. But this is really impressive. Experts from different countries, experts in acoustics, have come here to study, to try to know how this is possible. They leave the country just like they.
And it works all 4 sides the same.
Used to be, now only 2.
So he claimed that they didn't figure out how this worked, that they leave the country. These acoustics experts can't figure out how it works. But I think I know how it works. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Sorry about that. My roommate had a bunch of people just coming running through my house and making a bunch of noise, so I had to mute my sound. Well, I looked up this, but there's something called Bragg diffraction, Bragg reflector, right? If you look up a Bragg reflector, and I talked about this with those cavities on the last episode, which was cool that this came up, because Chichen Itza and the shape of this pyramid. If you look at the step pyramid, these walls are a Bragg reflector. That's exactly what a Bragg reflector is, and a Bragg reflector for sound. What these will do to the wave front, similar to this material, which I seem to think could be a distributed Bragg reflector, which does the same type of thing. This is interesting because this gives us a real world example of what it does to sound. So we have an incident impulse wave caused by the hand clap. And when that's reflected off of this first step on the wavefront, this first step will reflect that back a half a second before it reflects back off this step, and before it reflects back off this step. So it's not echoing off the top of the pyramid in this hollow chamber up here. It's echoing off the wavefronts at the front of these step pyramids, right? The steps in the step pyramid. And then once that reflected wave bounces back, what it does is it takes that one single clap impulse and breaks it into a bunch of different impulses. So that's the sound that you'll hear when the wave bounces back and comes back, is the additive reflected wave of all these different wave fronts on this essentially as a stepped differentiated Bragg reflector. So that's, in the simplest terms, how the Chichen Itza pyramid works to reflect the sound that way, and why it does it that way. Now, how they knew that, whether they knew that when they built it, whether they designed it specifically that way, that's a whole nother issue of debate and a whole nother discussion. But I do know the physics of it, and I'm not an acoustics expert, but I assume that they should have just talked to a physics expert who's familiar with waves and stuff, because it's a Bragg reflector, totally a Bragg reflector. And yeah, anyways, that's a side note. I thought that was cool, but yeah, let Joe Rogan know that I'll go on a show and explain how it works, and we can even build one and test it out. That'd be cool to build a big giant pyramid and test out some Bragg reflection and stuff. So this is a top story on a number of sites about you know, Mystery Wire, of course, with George Knapp's site there, and KLS. Yeah, let's watch some more John Lear interviews. I want to watch and talk about more John Lear stuff. Oh wow, this came out. This is the news coverage. I want to see what the news had to say about this, but they'll get flagged because that's newer videos. This older stuff I don't really get flagged so much for, but there's a lot of cool old interviews. I have. Let's watch this.
Now there are more people saying it.
Well, the point is, how can they project holograms of that size?
Here, that and therein lays the problem, because people are, when you see hologram, they're thinking of a Walt Disney little pixie dancing around in a little darkness area. That's all they know about holograms. They don't know that 20 years ago, we could project a hologram with heat, noise, light, speed, anything we wanted, anywhere. And we use that on 9/11.
Okay, how?
Right now, the television industry is ready to bring out television quality programs that you could put right on your desk, and you have a little little thing here. You can raise it up like this. I mean, you can enlarge it. You can bring it down to small. You can move it over there. You can move it over there, wherever you want, and it looks just like. And you can stand all around it and see from all sides. And the Japanese, a year ago, announced that not only do they have that, but they have it. They have touchy-feely 3D holograms that you can touch it. 10 years ago, they invited 30 of the top TV industrials, producers, and stuff. And similar to that, they took them into a small theater that accommodated about 40 or 50 people, and sat them down, and they said the future of television. A normal light like that, the lights didn't go out, and the guy comes from behind the curtain. He looked maybe well over 60, white hair, glasses. When he started talking, is obviously Eastern European with an accent. He started talking about the TV, how the tubes were initially made, the cathode ray tubes, and how it developed into this and that and so on. And as he's talking, he gets off the podium, walks up one aisle, down that aisle, looks at the audience, takes off his glasses, cleans them, walks up one aisle, down another aisle, gets back up on the podium. Everybody, by about this time, everybody's getting bored of stuff they've already heard. And he says, I want to thank you very much. And then just turned him off like that in front of everybody. It's just like what you're saying, but this is what they can do, but they can't bring it in right now because it's too close to 9/11. People are going to associate, when they were yelling at John Lear, 5 years ago, saying this was possible and saying it's impossible. There has to be a screen. There has to be a background. There has to be something we can project it on. It's bullshit. They don't know what's going on or how things develop. So,
John,
I don't know if he knows what's going on or how those things developed, but I would love to see the patents and some of that stuff demonstrated, because, here we are. If it was demonstrated and he saw the stuff in the 90s, why haven't we seen it now? It's just, it would have made its way out to the industry, man. There's just too much money to be made in some of this stuff. And if someone figured it out, I just don't buy all that stuff. But let's watch another interview. This was a great interview. I'd like to watch some key parts from this. Kevin Moore did this interview with John Lear. Let's get
that call in front of you saying you wanted to work at Area 51.
absolutely. That's what I was shocked why he would say that, because that, gave him away. That
How do you know there was anyone on the telephone that he was talking to?
Pardon?
How do you know that he was actually talking to anyone on the telephone?
I don't know.
He may have just been messing around in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever reason. So anyway, he a couple of weeks goes by, and I'm trying to remember. He had 3 interviews, and the first one, I think he came over, and he would come over practically every night, sit right there, and we'd chit chat. And I think he told me, he said, I got an interview at EG&G today, and he said, I aced it. And I said, how so? He said, well, they asked me about, and I forget what it was that they asked him about, but he said, I had done experiments on that. I knew exactly what they were talking about. And he said, I aced that one. So the second interview, he came, and this is an interview for the job. He says, you're never going to believe what the first question was. I said, what? He said, they said, do you know John Lear, and what's your relationship with John Lear? And Bob said, yes, I know him, but, I think he sticks his nose